Check, check, check. Check, check, check. Check doodle-doo. Check doodle-doo. Little pre-show check time. Pre-show check time. Quick audio check. Folks who are watching, please let me know if you can hear me okay. Check, 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 check a doodle-doo. Check a doodle-doo. Checking my audio. Checking my audio. 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 Checking that audio. Yeah. You guys are so silly. I noticed new promos up. Since we were talking about promos last week, I'm taking a look through the new stuff from Susan. Miss Susan. She cool. She does good promos. She does some fine promo-age here. That one's nice. That's really cool stuff. We sounding good? We sounding good. I'll be cutting the feed in a moment so as to start the actual thingamadoody without me yammering on. And I should get my yawning out of the way now. Matthew Smith, I see your question there about naming the shows, and I have a little bit of maintenance to do on that I plan to do today after we wrap. So, yes, I will be clearing that stuff up. So, I am pretty much always running around like a chicken with my head cut off over here, because that's just ridiculous amounts of stuff that I have on my plate at any given moment. So yeah. Do-do-do-do-do. Do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And there we go. Do-do-do-do. Loo-doo-doo, sending me stuff through Skype. Nope. Containers, portal, artist studio. Nope, don't want to do that. Don't want to do that. Oh, folks. Alright. Okay, vendor application. Terry has popped up in there. And, cool. Is there a spot somewhere on site for, let me type this in here. Cool, 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 cool. Is that my Skype? Alright. Killing the stream for just a moment so we can restart. Howdy, y'all. We is back. Here for another week and starting this thing up. So it is 1 o'clock and we are back for another of our CGBytes artist development seminars. It's actually about 1 minute till, so I guess I could joke around for the next 30 or 40 seconds if I really wanted to. But I'm not gonna. We're gonna hit this and get the ball rolling. Let's see. We have a couple folks who were watching went away when I restarted the stream. I hope you guys understand why I do that. If I don't restart the stream, then any of the like pre-show test run-up stuff like that is on the video, and then I have to like download it and cut it apart and do all kinds of stuff like that. So if I actually stop the stream, let it buffer out, and then restart it, then I get a cleaner cut for the rewatch. So that's why we do that. So hopefully no one got the wrong idea and bailed thinking that it was already over or something like that. That would be quite unfortunate. Let's see. So I am going to refresh the page on my monitoring system though, just so I can kind of double check everything, make sure we are all on the same page. All right. And how are we doing here? Okay, cool. Oh, nice. Very cool. So I see in the chat we just got our submission guidelines posted, and that's good. Let's see. Russ Barrett commented on singing. Yeah, I was on here just kind of mumbling earlier to check the audio feed and everything. So usually there'll be some kind of comment or something, you know, because it'll be my god awful noises on there. So let's see. I'm just kind of gathering up a couple things today because it's okay. Oop. Pardon me. Oop, I gotta kill that. Sorry, guys. So, just got a message coming through that I couldn't ignore there for a moment. So, all right, you guys. So we are here, and it is 5:02. So I always want to say 1 o'clock. It's God, because I got so used to the 1 o'clock time on Fridays, like forever there. So in my head, it's 1 o'clock, and then I'm completely off because of that. But it's actually it's 5 o'clock, and we are here for CGBytes artist development. This week is continuing our business series, and the business series has been kind of an oddball thing to toss out there because the majority of what I do, most of what I do is art. I focus on art all the time. That's what I do. I make art. I make all this stuff and put it out there for everybody. So a lot of what we've been doing in this particular series, though, is getting into the not so cool side of doing this stuff, and that is the business part of it, with things like promotion, talking about issues with like rendering stuff for your catalog, rendering your promotional images, all those kind of the hard necessities, the things that are like, well, gotta do it. So this week's subject is kind of an interesting one, and something that doesn't get talked about a lot, or I'll be frank, very honestly, and that is product testing. Okay, and I'm gonna stay very focused on the specifics of product testing for CGBytes, and not allow myself to get pulled off into some of the kinds of questions and things that I know can come up regarding product testing in the broader market. And the reason I'm going to stay focused on that, besides the fact that this is a CGBytes channel, this is a CGBytes show, and that's just how that rolls. But besides that, the process of testing varies wildly from place to place, and so the issues and things that come up, there's some things that are general, just this needs to be right no matter where you're at. There's certain things that are like that, and then there are times when in testing you'll have things that maybe are aesthetic differences. There may be things that are that to you as an artist will look fine, and to somebody who's testing your stuff, they may say, no, this is not cool. So, and the thing is, that stuff varies. Like I said, it varies wildly from store to store, and everybody out there there's some baseline things everybody kind of agrees on, but then every different place has their own nuances, their own little things that they find probably more important than, say, somebody else does, and so on. So that's one of the things that makes doing this stuff a little weird, because most people who do this don't sell in just one place. They move their stuff around, or they make content and sell in multiple places. And so one of the things that you have to navigate is that issue of of developing a rapport with testing wherever you're going to sell. So some of the things I'm going to talk about today are sort of experiential things that I've learned through the years from having pretty much sold everywhere that there has been to sell this stuff. So there's kind of some averages, some aggregates that I can talk about a little bit that are out of my experience with testing, and kind of help maybe give you guys some tips and some advice on dealing with it. It's no secret, I've said in forums and social media and conversations with people many times that there is nothing in this that frustrates me like testing. And it's not because I have a problem with products being tested. It's because, between different stores having different requirements and different approaches and different this and different that, and then having, within each store, you'll have different people testing products, and different people, it's just different sets of eyes, and it's just a human nature thing. Human beings no two people are going to see exactly the same issues in things. Somebody may fixate on bending, whereas another person may fixate on a texture issue, or somebody else may look at something else, and that's not a slam. And sometimes when I've talked about that, I've had people take the things that I have said about that kind of stuff before, take them out of context sometimes, and think that it's somehow that that Les has a problem with testing. No, I don't have a problem with testing. I just it can be very stressful. Testing is a stressful thing. It's probably the most stressful part of all of this for me. So I want to make sure that in the name of honesty and transparency, I speak rather frankly about it. It's something that I never look forward to the point where I submit a product anywhere. I never look forward to it. Not because I don't have confidence in my stuff, but because like I said, every place has their own paradigm, and every tester has their own set of eyes, and so it's very awkward and a little nerve-wracking, in my opinion, to submit a product anywhere, especially if you've spent a lot of time on something and you're real happy with it, you're excited, you feel like what you did is good work. And then you basically, as soon as you're done with it, and this is kind of an important part and aspect of this that I really want to spend a minute talking about, because I actually find this to be the hardest part of dealing with things, is you spend all this time working on something. You worked on something that you probably put, if not your heart into it, you probably put at least, you put a little piece of you into it just by investing time. And so you've got this investment there, and you feel good enough about it that you're going to put it out there and try to sell it. And the first thing that's going to happen is you're going to submit it. And it's going to get kicked back. Every product, everything gets kicked back. I don't care where you're at, who it is. I think maybe in my entire career of doing this stuff, maybe twice have I ever had a product actually go all the way through, get cleared for sale in any store without at least some little thing about, hey, can you look at this before we approve it? Every single time, it's whatever you do is going to get kicked back. I would just count on it. And if you're pleasantly surprised, you guys may be a whole lot better. I'd be the first to admit, I make my mistakes. And if you're fortunate enough that you don't have things kicked back, hey, awesome. Let me know, because I want to come learn from you. But be prepared for it. Odds are, just statistically high, that you're going to have something kicked back your first, when you submit any product. So that's kind of the first part of this topic that I wanted to get into, was talking about that, about brace yourself, brace yourself. Because it doesn't matter how it's said. It doesn't matter. It's always going to sting a little bit when somebody says, yeah, well, here, fix this. Because no one is going to send something up anywhere that they think is broken. No one is. No one's going to send something up anywhere that they think is good enough. Otherwise, they wouldn't send it. It kind of on its face, makes sense. And so the first thing that's going to happen is something is going to get kicked back. You're going to have to revise something. So brace yourself. That's my message on that, is brace yourself for that. Be prepared for it. And over the years, one of the things that I've tried to learn, and I don't always succeed at this, but I've tried to learn, is to develop a certain degree of detachment from any kit, any project. And it's really hard for me because a lot of the stuff that I make is very artistic. It's very much in the vein of art that I love. It's not just hey, I want to make this cool, outfit or set of pants or boots or whatever. The stuff that I make tends to be artistic in that sense of, I'm creating, creatures or, character concepts that, are kind of high concept type things. And so there's an investment in that happens for me that I think probably happens for a lot of us as artists doing this. And, pardon me. So you submit, and then you get rejected. That's the process. The general process of all this is work, dream up something cool. Okay, cool. I'm working on it. I'm making it. Woohoo! Awesome! I got it made. Great, cool. Now I got to do all my promos. Cool. Let's do that. We got our promos done. Yeah, this is beautiful. This is great. Man, I feel so good about this. Submit. Rejection. And that's where the process goes every single time. And as an artist, you know, there's an emotional component that happens in there, whether we want to admit it or not, and it sucks so bad. And I'm speaking just candidly about that because it does. That part sucks. So how do we deal with that, right? How do we deal with that? Because if you can deal with that part, then the rest of dealing with testing is easy. If you can deal with that first part, the emotional part, the human part of having something you put hard work into get tossed back at you, if you can make it through that, you can make it through any part of this. Okay? That's actually kind of an important thing to figure out. Testing, in some ways, I've come to see product testing as not just a test of my product, it's a test of myself. And how I'm going to deal with whatever that feedback's going to be. And, you know, some days are better than others with that. But at the end of all of it, the thing that I try to keep in mind is my products aren't truly finished until they reach the end user. And the testers are the gatekeepers to that. Testing is the middle, the people in the middle who, whether I like it or not, whether any of us like it or not, or no matter what it feels like when you get that testing feedback, the testers are there to do a job. And that job is to help keep the quality level up, you know, to help make sure that stores, I mean, it costs a lot of money to run one of these stores. The folks behind them, you know, put a lot of money and energy and effort into them. And so testing is one of those things that I've come to understand. You know, it's like, yeah, I get it. You know, the testing is there so that basically they can help maintain the quality level across the store, which makes for a better return on investment for those, you know, for those outlets as businesses. And CGBytes is no different. So understanding that and keeping that economic sort of component in mind as to what testers are there for and what testing's job really is helps me deal with it a whole lot better. Because in the end, if something doesn't pass testing, something doesn't get out the door, then my product doesn't get sold and I make no money off of it, and all my time invested on it was a loss. I don't like losses. I'm not a big fan of loss. I try to minimize loss everywhere I can. So I try to keep that in mind, and that's kind of the thing that I would offer right off. Okay. And my internet connection's out. Great. Hello, 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 hello. Am I back, folks? Am I back? Hey guys, just so you know, there have been thunderstorms here in southern Ohio all day, and they're like these spot showers. So like right now I'm looking outside my window and it's sunny outside, but everything's soaking wet. And what's happening is we're getting actually early April, late March, early April, all the way through the end of May and even early June. it's like freakish weather season where we swing from, we'll have winter weather one day, 85 degrees the next, storms, thunderstorms, tornadoes. It's absolutely chaotic. Like within the course of a month and a half's time, you can experience just about every kind of weather the planet has to offer living here in southern Ohio. And which is amusing at times, but not when that weather is wreaking havoc on power and internet lines. So I disappeared once, but I'm back. If I disappear again, stick around because I might come back. And if not, you'll know that that the universe has conspired to take us down. So anyway, where I was, if I recall, I was just speaking about the mentality and the thought process of dealing with testing and why there are some components of it that are uncomfortable. There are components of what we do with content that are just uncomfortable because you have to offer your work up for somebody to basically judge it, tell you whether it's good enough to go in a store or whatever, and that always kind of sucks. So there's that. Where I was at, I think, was talking about kind of how I have learned to look at that, and I'm very fortunate that I started my career as an artist in comic books. When I was a wee lad of 19. I was 19 years old. And I started out in comic books. And it was funny, I was actually just talking with a comic book guy yesterday about this, about how at 19, I was pointed to a really huge comic book convention back before Comic Cons were as big as they are now. Nowadays, they're just nuts. They're circuses, which is cool, but whatever. And but I was pointed, my very first convention, I was pointed at a show in Manhattan at the Jacob Javits Convention Center. Huge show. It was one of the biggest shows in the country at the time. And I was given all these names of different editors and people to go to. And in that world, editors are kind of like testers here. And I was told, point blank, they're going to destroy you. They're going to rip you apart. They're going to be bastards. And if you can take it, you might last. And that was the truth. It was the truth. I went through and I waited in those lines, and I spent a grueling day getting my portfolio absolutely destroyed by these guys. Absolutely destroyed by these folks. And so I was thrown into the fire pretty early on, long before, a few years before getting into, it was actually pre-3D animation days. I was kind of thrown into that world where you did have to accept that someone was going to be critical, someone was going to tear you apart, you're going to have to deal with it. And so I try to apply some of the experience of that to dealing with testing in this stuff, because it's very similar. It is a very similar experience. Testers are essentially a lot of times editors. Some places will have policies about testers and artistic feedback. I'm a big fan of testers not necessarily giving a whole lot of art feedback. Like, I want to know technically what's wrong. Aesthetically, I feel like that's really more on the artist. Although, sometimes that kind of feedback is not a bad thing. So, it's all a matter of understanding that, think of that tester as your first customer. And if you can sell that tester on what you've got, then the other customers lined up behind them are gonna be better for it. Your experience with them, the experience they have with you, is going to be better for what you get through with how things go with that first customer of sorts. So that's kind of my personal philosophy on testing and dealing with testing. And and like I said, I that's how I try to deal with things from day to day. And everybody comes in with problems sometimes. Everybody has a day where something rubs you wrong, or something just doesn't seem right, or you totally disagree with something, and that stuff sucks. And that kind of gets to the next point that I want to make about testing, is that it's really important to try and develop as much of a rapport with whoever your contact in testing is. Okay, and at CGBytes, that is going to be Miss Terry, who you guys see in the chat. She's here with us today in chat. I had hoped to be able to have Terry actually on via voice with me, but for technical reasons, that was not to be. So, yay, there's Terry. Hi, Terry. So Terry is the point of contact for testing at CGBytes. She also wears a bunch of other hats there, but I know testing is one of her biggest responsibilities. She tests things, and she has other testers who test things for her. I know the policy there is that she will be the go-between to kind of keep artists and testers separated and not necessarily talking directly. And that's kind of a cool thing, actually, because if you build up you get into that relationship with Terry, and you develop some communication there, then it kind of makes it so that there's a single personality coming out of CGBytes, and a single personality reflected in testing, which can make it much more consistent. And that's kind of a cool thing. That's something that I'm very, I'm very impressed with, is that consistency in testing. So with that in mind, I actually put together, because I knew Terry had mentioned to me that she may have some technical issues with audio, and so might not be able to come in the way I had hoped. So I put together some questions and had a conversation with her via text earlier, and I'm just going to kind of bring that up and walk through some of that, actually walk through pretty much all of that for you guys, because the questions I had for her are kind of pertinent, I think, to a lot of our experience as vendors in this market. And hopefully what she says will kind of provide this counter to or another facet of things to what I was just talking about, because I come at things as an artist. I'm an artist. I've been an artist of this stuff for a long time. And so, I can bring you guys, this is the artist perspective, and this is how I feel, and hopefully maybe, if any of you guys are kind of starting out and you had trouble with testing, or something's gotten kicked back, and so on and so forth, and it's frustrating, or it's you feel a little disappointed or frustrated with it, then hopefully hearing some of that from somebody who's been around the block with it for a long time will let you know, you're not in it alone. We all get that. All of us. Doesn't matter who you are, how long you've been doing this stuff. I get those frustrations all the time. It happens. But the key to dealing with that is making sure that you try to stay cool. Try to remember that that other person, they've got a job to do. They're testing. They're helping make sure that your work ends up being the best it can be, and ends up reflecting their store the best it can, and you as an artist the best it can. So, I've had experiences where I am not ashamed to admit that my experience with testing improved my work. And that's a good thing. That's a good thing. I think that if you approach it with the idea that any chance to improve yourself is a good thing, then try to look at it that way, and it makes it much easier. It's a question of ego, and it makes it much easier. As artists, we all have a certain degree of ego. Otherwise, we wouldn't do what we do. It takes a little bit of ego to be willing to throw something you made out there in front of people and go, check out what I did. So that being the case, that ego aspect of being an artist is something that can get hurt very easily. And and I think is at the center of a lot of issues that we have sometimes. And trust me, this is stuff that I never thought about 10, well, maybe 15 years ago. This is stuff that I never thought about. And, when you're younger, you got a hotter head about things. But over time, I can look back and go, yeah, this is a role that testing has played for me along the way. And it's actually been a positive one. So even if it hurts sometimes, and that's kind of the sucky part, but it happens. So anyway, let me get into some of the conversation with Terry, and hopefully, since she is with us via chat, just not via voice, hopefully she can maybe illuminate some stuff there, and you guys can ask her some questions too while I'm talking about stuff and hopefully giving you guys some insights into things. Also, the nature of what we're talking about today with testing, that as a subject might not actually fill our usual 2-hour block. So if there's time left over, then I'll definitely throw things open for questions from everybody about all kinds of stuff, which I like to do anyway. And if there's enough time left over, I might kind of step back through some recent topics for a second to take some questions and maybe offer some refreshers or some different perspectives on a few different art techniques and things like that, so that it's not all just this dry talking stuff today. So anyway, so the first question that I asked Terry is, what is your most common reason for sending a submission back to an artist? And she says there really isn't one common reason. It depends on the type of product it is. With character textures, it's usually seams, and in poses, it's mesh intersections or floating off the floor. And actually, going to that last point there about floating off the floor, if something that I'm going to ask it right here, since I know she's in the chat, is let's say you've done, and this is a good one because I think folks who make poses will probably want to know something like this. Let's say you're doing poses that are action poses, and you're doing something that has a character jumping. What is, Terry, if you could maybe pop into the chat with a response to that, what is the approach that should be taken to that, if someone has that sort of thing in their poses? Because I think that would be a nice thing for folks to be aware of, So if you have a second, Terry, and could say something to that issue, that would be great. Because I totally have had that question come up for myself before. Because I'm like, you guys hear me say this all the time. I'm a comic book guy. I like things that have, kind of hyper extended actions and all kinds of crazy stuff going on. So, I'm the kind of guy who will, if I make a kit that's got an axe in it or a sword in it or something like that, I'm probably going to have the character at least one pose involved somewhere where he's leaping through the air in some grandiose sort of way. So, with the thing in poses there, Terry, about floating off the floor, if you could address that a little bit, maybe give it some context, I think people would really appreciate that. So let's see. Oh, that's great. So she says, note the pose number, name, and put it in the README that it's supposed to be floating. README is the cover your butt ticket. Good to know. See, and that's why I wanted to do this particular topic, so we could kind of address some of the oddball moments like that happen, because those are frustrations. If somebody is making superhero poses that have flight or leaping and things like that in them, and they don't know to put that in a README or something, that this is supposed to be like this, then it gets kicked back. They're going to be like, well, why did they get kicked back? And it introduces a frustration that maybe doesn't need to be there. So that's cool. I like that. But that's right. Russ Barrett says Terry got less to say, but that's right. Dang it, butthead. Let's see. Oh, nice. Terry jumps ahead of me there. That's cool. She says, even with mesh intersections, if it is supposed to be mimicking soft body dynamics, listed in the README. So that's a good one. That's another one. I'm glad she beat me to the punch on that one. That's another one that I've had questions about before too. Because let's say you've got a hand grasping something. Yeah, you don't want to have that. Let's say you got a hand holding a hammer. right? You don't want that hammer's mesh obviously going real deep into that hand, but a tiny, and I mean tiny, I'm talking, you know, it's like you can't fudge it, you know, but a tiny little bit of just, you know, it's almost impossible to make things interact with each other and not have some tiny, you know, millimeter degree of mesh intersection sometimes. So, you know, that's one of those things too where I think experience oftentimes is going to dictate that. So as you produce products and you submit them, you know, be prepared that, especially if you know, you can look at your stuff and go, okay, that one might be problematic. You know, that you can look at a pose and see where, you know, it might be, you know, an issue, or you could expect it. Like here, and this, by the way, I'm using as an example this Tide flannel. This is a freebie that just went up. Fun little kit. Kind of the second half of the top that goes with the shorts that we put out recently. But like here, I've got a pose on this character, and this doesn't include these poses. But let's just say that you know, here's this pose, and I wanted to have her touching her cheek right there. And you know, if we wheeled around that pose and looked at it real close, there's probably going to be some degree of just tiny little mesh intersection. And I'm actually loading up the scene that was rendered from right now, just so we can kind of look at that stuff and maybe address it directly. So let's just take a look here, because I think having a live example of that sort of thing is really good. So like right here, if I were to submit this now, like for the sake of a render, like that angle right there, this pose is going to work. But if I were to submit this, if I were to save this as a pose, this little guy right here would get this kicked out. So so that is an example of something in poses that you got to watch for. And it's easy enough to fix. I mean, I'll come through here and move this stuff just a little tiny bit. Okay. So then if we wanted to have some full touch going on though, let's zoom in here, and if you hit Control F, then it will frame and zoom exactly what you have selected. So here I have that fingertip, and I'm just going to barely move that little tiny bit. Okay. And then of course there's also things like mesh smoothing to take into account and things like that. So that's something that I've often wondered about too, is, you know, it's like when you have mesh smoothing, you have subdivisions on things, there's shrinkage back from the original underlying cage of the mesh, so you have to compensate a little bit. So like for a pose like this, I might get it into place and then just hit the plus or minus sign on a given rotation until it is exactly right. And so if we were to zoom in, see right there, we can see just this tiny little bit of mesh intersection. And I won't say whether or not that is acceptable or not. What I will say is that degree into that shirt, if that were part of the set, I would probably submit with that. I would submit with that and see if that can pass. And then if they say, you know, if it comes back out of testing and I'm told, yeah, this has an intersection here, well, then guess what? I'm going to come in, grab this, and let's just pull it back out a little bit. So sometimes that's just what you have to do. And for the sake of the video too, I'm also going to read off some of Terry's comments and things, because this, you know, in the chat, because that's kind of cool. Let's see. Terry says on mesh intersections, the testers will report all mesh intersections. She says, I observe the intersections and determine if they are deliberate or perhaps should be there. And she says the intersection Les just demonstrated would have passed. So there you go. There's a great live example of exactly what I'm talking about. So you have there's policy of no mesh intersections, but there is wiggle room because there are times when it makes sense for there to be. And you have to, though, again, you have to defer back to the testers. You have to defer back to Terry on that. And understand, that's their job. Is to make that call as to whether that is okay. Is that are we too far over the line here? Where are we at? So and sometimes it's that's why I say I think every product, any of the stuff that we do, there's so many variables and just crazy factors in any of this stuff that I mean, sometimes it's a wonder to me anything ever gets released, because anything, I've said before, products aren't finished. It's kind of like George Lucas once said about movies. A movie isn't finished, it's just abandoned. Products are never finished. Never. There's no such thing as a finished product anywhere in this. They're just abandoned. They just get to a point where you're like, well, I can live with that. So, and testing is where you get that process of somebody else looking at it and saying whether or not they can live with it or not. And if you can live with it and they can live with it, then you're good. So, hopefully that makes some sense there. So, let's see. All right, so let's go back into my conversation with her. Wow, that was just off the first question. So that's good though, because that shows what kind of a topic this is. It's a hot topic that nobody hardly talks about. So the next question I had for Terry, I said, are there issues you frequently see in different types of products, or different types of product submissions you'd like artists to pay particular attention to? She says, again, it depends on the product. It's better to have a full suite of items in a product to make it more valuable. If you're submitting a character, which in parentheses she said morph and texture, it's a good idea to add in some expressions and perhaps some poses. With props, she says it's essential to have a set of starter poses, particularly if they're parented to hands or other body parts. Then she adds, full scenes must have at least one camera preset. More is better. So that's a nice full answer to that. So are there issues you frequently see? Yeah, issues you'd like artists to pay more attention to. So that's some good stuff there. There are a few things that I would add to that. That is. Especially in regards to her comment about it's better to have a full suite of items in a product to make it more valuable. That's something I try to do a lot, is anything that I put out, I'm going to try to make it as feature rich as I can. The upside of that is the more feature rich a product is, the more value it can have to the end user. The downside to that is the more feature rich a product is, the more things there are to test, and the more opportunities there are for things to fail. And the more opportunities there are for, even when something passes, for users to find something they think has an error to it. So that's a question for each of us on a business level to kind of make a decision about, is how much do I put in a given kit, and how do I kind of hedge my bets on, where that's going to go? Do I put a ton of stuff in there knowing that it makes it more likely that something gets kicked back or there's an issue somewhere? Or do I keep it hyper-focused and very tight and just try to get a lot of small things kind of through the process like that? Either approach is valid. And, any day of the week I could be in the process of taking either one of those approaches. So, that's But that's something to think about that kind of plays into that last question there. So moving on, actually before I move on, I want to glance back at the chat and see if she says, yeah, she says, generally speaking, you want the fluff to be an add-on kits. Let's see. All right, so moving on. My next question for Miss Terry was, knowing that testing is a frequent topic among artists, what would you like to let them know about the process to help build a better working understanding between artists and the testing team? And her response to that was beta, then more beta, beta, and more beta. Beta test, beta test, beta test. She says, if you submit a product that hasn't been at least looked at by another person, you have a 99.9% failure rate. And it's usually really simple stuff that just needed a second pair of eyes to catch it. She is absolutely on point there. Absolutely on point about that. You need beta testers, and that's something that I have to confess, I don't always have beta testers handy when I need them, and that kind of sucks. It would be, you know, it is what it is, and I encourage everyone to reach out to customers who they know. If you develop a bit of a rapport with your own customers, hopefully you might be able to find someone out of that who you can tap from time to time to be a beta tester. These days, I have a handful of folks who I know I can go to who are going to beta test for me, and probably also contribute to promo art, which is a nice thing. I find that there's a real synergy that happens between beta testing and promo art, because if you can find promo people, first off, I think it's important in promo art that you try always be able to do artwork with your own stuff, but also always try to get artwork done by other people so the end users see someone other than you used it. Because if they don't see that somebody other than you used it, it's harder to sell them on the fact that they could use it. So those people then, if you look around and you find somebody to work with who can help you with promo art, then that promo art person is probably going to drive that product in the process. They're going to use it. They're essentially going to do a kind of testing on it as they work with it. So that's a handy thing, and it's nice the way those two things can work together. Now, there are people I know, and I hope I don't anger anybody with this, there are people who I have had beta test things before, who I honestly aren't that great as artists. Maybe really cool people who love to play with the stuff, but their art skills maybe aren't at the level that I want for a promo artist. But those people are still an important part of the process, because when you have somebody who can beta test your stuff, it does vastly increase your chances of having a much smoother time in full product testing. So you know, it is definitely something to keep in mind. So let's move on to the next question, and then once I get through all of the questions, I am going to go back into the chat some more, field some questions from you guys, kind of read back through what's there, and you know, and take that another step further, because I can see it looks like there's, at first glance, I haven't read it all, so you guys could just be, you know, telling fart jokes in there for all I know. But it looks like there's a lively conversation going on in the chat today, and I always like seeing that, so that's cool. Pardon me. So the next question I had for Terry was, what are your policies and procedures on artists in getting feedback from or interacting with testing? And she says, artists only interact with me. We have a policy that prohibits testers from contacting the artist until after the product is released. And I've talked about that a little bit already. You know, and that policy varies from outlet to outlet with this kind of stuff. That's the policy at CGBytes, and I am not averse to that policy, because sometimes some of the worst experiences I have had trying to sell my goods have come, well, first off, bar none, all of the worst experiences I have ever had doing this have been related to testing, period. Every single one, without fail. All but one. Actually, thinking back, there's probably there's one thing I've experienced that wasn't related to testing that was pretty bad. But the vast majority of my worst experiences have been related to testing, and not at CGBytes, by the way. That's one of the reasons that I am supportive of CGBytes as an effort for a kind of a new alternative place to sell this type of content, is that testing there works a little differently. And I think Terry can probably speak to that a little bit, in the sense that I know she has kind of a double blind process, and there's stuff there that kind of I don't even know the whole process, but from what I've seen, the process of testing there is simultaneously transparent and tends to be pretty protective, in the way that where you have just Terry as your point of contact, you don't get the situation that I've ran into, that I was about to kind of illustrate a bit, where you'll have a tester. I've experienced at times before where I'll get something from a tester, and they maybe don't like, they've been assigned a product and they just don't like the product. It's not their cup of tea. And so everything they have to say is just a downer, and it might not even always be, 100% appropriate feedback, but it would just be like, well, I don't, this is like this when I really think it should be like this, and this should be better like this, and then you have this issue as an artist. You have to cut through the noise and figure out what in that feedback is valid and what is somebody being cranky because they don't like what they got to do, and that happens. That happens more often than I care to recall. So the nice thing then about at CGBytes having a single point of contact in Terry is you don't get that. You do not have that sort of that personality layer involved. Now, from time to time, Terry might look at something and give you an honest opinion about something, and she'll do that. That's her prerogative to do. But it's so much easier to take that from a single point of contact than from, however many testers get to put their hands on something. That's kind of cool. So I wanted to kind of mention that for a second and dig in on that, because that's kind of a nice aspect of the way things work at CGBytes. So she says, and I mentioned this, she going on, because I kind of stepped aside from her comment on that. She says, our procedure is different than other brokerages in that we have double blind testing. No one knows who is testing the products other than me and Tara, my assistant. So, and don't you guys go bugging Tara about it. She's not going to tell you. Their lips are sealed. She says, typically I have a senior tester and a staff tester do the testing. Once those reports come back, I review them. If both are passing reports, it goes into the release queue for that day. If the reports come back significantly different, I test the product myself. So Terry, if her testers, she'll have two different testers look at it, and if the reports come back different, she will personally go through it and hit it with a hammer herself and see what breaks. Once those reports come back, she says, I review them. I need to move forward. She says, if I can figure out what the disparity is, then I decide if it's user error or the product needs another senior tester to look it over. She says, one of the biggest issues in poses is limits on or limits off. Says, please note in your README if limits on or off is required. Saves everyone a lot of time. So that's a good point. And, it's something else that is kind of a good thing to keep in mind. I believe you should be able to contact Terry pretty easily about if you have a question, hey, I'm doing this kind of thing and I'm not sure if I should have X, Y, or Z this way or that way. By all means, ask. You can ask her. You can, a lot of that kind of stuff you could probably ask me too, and I'll be able to help you navigate that and figure out, is there some decision you're about to make that is going to cause you a product failure, or should I note this a certain way? So you guys, any folks who are either here for the live event or who watch this in the rewatches and are interested in selling at CGBytes, you can reach out to me anytime. Just about. I'm via Skype. You could find me at it's CGBytes Artist Development. Has my name, Les Garner, and then comma. CGBytes Artist Development is the screen name on Skype. Or if you just you can Google my name and find me. You can Google Les Garner 6S1, and you'll find me through a bazillion different channels and ways that you can reach me. So, contrary to popular belief, I'm a really easy guy to get a hold of. And so any of you folks who are interested in selling your content at CGBytes but have questions about one thing or another about it, you feel free to reach out to me with those questions, and I can help you out probably quite a bit. And anything that I can't help you out with, maybe something that's a more administrative type question, Terry, I can forward you on to Terry, and you guys can hook up and sort out whatever your needs are. And in terms of marketing, send you to Jason, and he can help you guys out there. So they're kind of always around and available, which is pretty cool. So the next question that I had for Terry was, what is your current time from submission to beginning a product test? And she says, depends on when it is submitted. If it is submitted after 4 p.m. CST, Central Standard Time, it will not be assigned until the next day. If it's submitted by 9 a.m. CST, it will be immediately assigned if there are available testers. Certain times of the year, she says, we get slammed, and it can take up to 2 days to get assigned. So that's another perk of CGBytes, is the system that they have in place of testing is, and I think I can say this and not be wrong, definitely from my experience I can say this, it's the fastest testing you're going to find in this business, period. They want your products, and they want to see you get your products out there. They want to see you succeed, and you can't succeed if your stuff doesn't get out the door. So they're going to test it as fast as they can, and get you that feedback as fast as they can. So that's a very cool thing, and I encourage you guys to take advantage of that. So the next question I had, is there a rough estimate you can give of the time it takes for a test to happen for various products? And she says it depends on the queue. Most products are tested and released within 3 days. So that's another thing too, is that at CGBytes you're going to get the product tested and released. You're not going to have throttled release schedules like you do in a lot of other places. That's kind of cool, because then you're capable of, you can get a good amount of stuff out the door that way. And I've always been kind of a high volume producer of content, so I kind of dig that sort of thing. That's nice. Let's see. So assuming the differences between things like pose packs, texture sets, original figures, clothing, and so on, I ask, can you elaborate on the process of testing the different types of content so that artists can have a clearer picture of what testers do? That's kind of a big question for me, because I know what I would do to test something, but my wife Rebecca, who a lot of you guys probably know from history with me and the history of 6S1, Rebecca worked with me for years, and one of her primary jobs was product testing. And so the way I would use something, and the things that to me were test driving a product, to her were, nope, she's not going to do that. She's going to do something completely different and probably break it. So, you know, that was a question that was particularly interesting to me. Was, you know, anyway, so Terry's reply, she said, all testers are required to read the README file. Okay, that's good to know. She says, if the artist has included a README with clear instructions and notes, this really speeds testing up. She says, if a README is spare or has nothing more than a list of files and an email address, it's an automatic fail. We simply are not able to read minds, and neither is purchasing public. So there's some expectations there for at least some basic instructions. If you make a lot of the same kinds of products, like say you make a lot of shirts, then your instructions are probably going to be the same. This is just kind of a tip from me, that if you make a lot of stuff that has generally the same sort of usage instructions, make yourself a templated README, so that you have a lot of that kind of stuff written down, and you don't need to go back over and over. You can just include that every time. So she says, if a product has a clear and detailed usage instructions, typically it will go through much faster through the queue. She says, let's see. This is she says, poses will be checked from all angles with an up-close camera. Don't think we won't see that one little mesh intersection. We will. Trust me, they will. They will. They will definitely see it. She says, characters need to have all angles checked and all seams checked, both rendered and unrendered. Basic poses will be used to make sure morphs are actually usable. So that's kind of an interesting thing to note, is that if you're making character sets, you want to make sure that, you know, like if it's for Daz Studio and you've used some of the techniques that I've shown you in the past, then you may need to make sure that you have the proper UV set in place, that stuff's all working properly. And, you know, some of this stuff seems like it might be a no-brainer. It seems like it might be obvious, but, you know, it's mistakes that I make. It's mistakes that we all make at some point or another, so just keep it in mind. So on like character sets that she's referring to there, yeah, you want to make sure that you check all your seams and everything. If here's the thing, here's something to keep in mind with that too. Like, let's go pull up. Let me pull up something that maybe has some textures, so I can show you a couple of things real quick related to character sets with that, because this is kind of a cool point, kind of an interesting, important point. Let's go grab something. Where am I going? G3. No. Give me just a moment. Oh, I have so much stuff sometimes it's a little weird to get through. Okay, here we go. So here's a shot of a texture kit that was one of the earlier things that I did for Daz Studio, and you'll notice it has black buffer area, black border area around the texture in the grout and the dead space around the UVs. Now, in Zbrush, where I do most of my texture work, I do have it set up so that it has about a 4 to 6 pixel overpaint. However, sometimes, and this would be a case where this would be a maybe, I'm not sure, I don't remember if this had this happen or not. I don't think it did, since I still have black there. But it may be something where if you rendered this, you wouldn't see the seams, but in the viewport you can see them, because you know the way the different programs work and what they do with things in texture display and viewports. You can get in a viewport, you can get artifacting, you can get texture slippage. The biggest issue is texture downsampling. Most of these programs will have a threshold of texture resolution that they'll actually display, and if that is low, then and you have black or some other form of colored, I call it texture grout, because it's it's kind of like the grout between tiles. If you have that dead space has a color or something to it, then you stand a high likelihood of having that show up. And since I use ZBrush, most commonly the colors for me is going to be black, and so I stand a real risk of having that show up. You want to try to make sure then that you set up your paint program, whatever you use, or whatever technique you use. You want to try to make sure that if it's like a polypaint program like ZBrush, or if it does straight texturing but then has spread and things like that like Substance, you're going to want to make sure that you look up whatever kind of setup you need to do to allow yourself enough pixel overpaint. And what I mean by that is or pixel spreading, that those edge pixels around UV shells will spread, carrying the color out past the edge of those, so that in the viewport, when it downsamples, there's enough color information around those edges that it doesn't downsample to the point that it grabs that border color or that grout color. That way you get a positive test, both in terms of the rendering, because the stuff then renders fine, but then also it looks good in the viewport. And that's something that I have not always been of the mindset that I've come to these days on it. It used to not mean a thing to me, to be honest, because in my mind I'm like, you're going to use it to render. You're going to render with it, But over time and experience, I've come to kind of the realization that these days I would say that a good 2/3 of what allows you some success at this business is user experience. So you can make the coolest, most interesting looking things in the world, and if the user experience is bad, or the user thinks their experience was bad, even though you may know it was exactly the way it was supposed to be, they just didn't bother to render it or something like that, right? If the user comes away from it with some form of a negative experience, then you probably just lost a customer, and so then you're trying to skate uphill with that. So you want to try to make sure that you get that sort of thing taken care of. There are little things like I'm saying. This here I'm just using the example of being able to view seams in the viewport, and that's kind of it might seem like a small thing, but like I said, I used to think that wasn't a big deal, and it's still not a huge deal. I mean, you can have something that works really, really well, but it's just a smart thing to go ahead and take that extra effort. Set up whatever you're using so that you get past that. You don't have the issue of that. There's a lot of little things in testing that are, I believe, sort of needless stresses we put ourselves through, because a lot of this stuff you can kind of set things up certain ways and make sure that you're in the right zone to begin with. So the remainder, the rest of her answer to that question, she said, characters, props, and scenes will be rendered and checked from all angles. So, and on that, if I could pose a quick question for her in chat, with scenes and things where you're going to render them from various angles or whatever. What about if you have, let's say you've built a scene that is kind of like a movie set, where you've got a set of props. Let's say you've got a building facade and a piece of street. Well, there may be parts of that are intended to be to go off camera, so it has the illusion of a larger environment, but you're really meant for certain kinds of shots. I want to ask Terry if she could elaborate on that a little bit. Just that's kind of an example, but it's an example that I think holds some value across a lot of different types of products for props and scenes. So I know that my personal take on it would be to document that, So, yeah, exactly. And Terry says, then you make sure you have it covered in the README, Make sure you have working camera presets. Exactly. Cool. That's what I was thinking, but I didn't want to speak for you. I wanted to be able to get that straight from you in the chat. So yeah, it is something in place. There's some aspect of your scene or prop kit where looking at it from various angles or whatever is, not something that should be done. Then make a note of it. There's a kit of mine up at CGBytes, that relatively recent kit that was the what did I call it now? I hate it when I can't even remember the names of my own kits. I put out so much stuff sometimes it gets kind of goofy that way. Here it is, my Path of Stone. So this is a good example of something like that, where the Path of Stone is a scene kit. I've included a ton of cameras for it, but if you're going to render this from every angle, well, there are some angles it's probably not going to look very good from, particularly underneath. So I tend to be a literalist, so if somebody says I'm going to render this from all angles, I'll be like, oh, no, make sure you don't go under it. It's not meant for that. It's open bottomed and all that sort of thing. And then also, like if you moved the camera out to the edge of this, and looked down on it from the sky, you would see, that it's really a square plot of land. So, there's little things like that. Some of that stuff might seem obvious, but it's always better to document it. Okay, always better to document it, and that will make your experience with testing much smoother. So, guys, it is actually an hour and 10 minutes in. I usually take a short break at an hour in, which I desperately need to do right now because I need a drink of something. And so I'm gonna do that, and then I'm going to take that short break, come back, skim through the chat, and then I'll go through the rest of the conversation that I had with Terry about this, and then we'll see where we land on that. And if there's a little time left, maybe we'll do something else. Or it's actually, I'm really pleased with the conversation I see in the chat and the interaction everybody's having on this, because it's good stuff. It's really important to get this part of the process down. Working with testing is, like you guys have heard me kind of rant about, it's the hardest part to me. To me, dealing with testing is the hardest part. So if you can get a grip on that, then you can do this. You can do this and do it well. So I'm going to go grab that drink, take my short little break, and when I come back, we'll move on into hour 2. So you guys hang tight. I shall return. Howdy folks, I have returned. So, as per usual, post break, I'm gonna take a quick look through the chat, see what I missed while I was away. See y'all talking about me. Let's see. So, and also I'm going to take the moment to kind of say hi to folks, because I haven't given my usual shout outs, but it's always kind of cool. So joining us in the live chat, I am seeing Matthew Smith. Thanks for being here. Reggie Hicks, of course, Jason and Terry. My good buddy Brent, Mr. Brent Bowers is with us. Cool dude. Known Brent for a very long time. Let's see, Russell Barrett is with us, active in the chat. That's cool. And let's see, Nick Silver is here. I think I might have responded to him at one point. Let's see, Nick, Reggie Hicks. Who else? Enrico is here. I'm probably not pronouncing that right, but it's such an exotic sounding name, I have to roll the R's. So Enrico, Nick Silver, I think I mentioned Nick. If I didn't, hi Nick, how you doing? Dr. Gaffaguy Plus, I hope I'm pronouncing that right. If I'm not, just send me a correction somewhere. Dr. Gaffaguy, R. I see the big R, that's for Reggie Hicks. Okay, cool. Enrico, Nick. I thought we had some other people join. Oh, there's Limba Zero. Hi Limba. And Cajun Beauty is here. So very cool. Nice to have you guys with us. Our weekly little shindig. Colonel Sanders, how you doing? Thought I saw a couple other names pop up later on in the chat. And if I miss you, don't take offense. Let's see. Video Beagle. That's a cool name. Video Beagle. Let's see. Video Beagle asks, do they welcome, I think he's talking about CGBytes, do they welcome back and forth testing, like they reject something, can you get feedback and resubmit? And Terry says, I generally send a list of issues and renders to illustrate the issues you can fix and resubmit. So that's cool. Alright. So I'm just getting kind of caught up here on the chat, you guys. And almost there, I think. Almost there. Dave Bates asks, so where do you find beta testers? Let's see. Terry says, Dave, ask around. You can find them in forums and on any Facebook groups. Matt Pitts says, I do agree that you need to have others look at products before submission, as it's often hard to find conflicts between items users may have that you don't own yourself. That is very true. Terry says, I only address the issues in the product itself. I do not judge artistic or usability. Let's see. Henrico says, I'll do beta testing. If someone needs help, PM me on my Facebook for email address. There you go. I like that. I like seeing you guys make little connections with each other like that. That's very cool. And a little later in the game, I see Miss Susan, Silver Fox Studios is here. Susan, I actually used some of your latest work as an example of some stuff early on today. Some of your new promos. Your promo images, by the way, Susan, your promo images are looking good. Like I've seen you, like they were good a year ago, but they have taken a massive jump forward. I don't know what you're doing, but keep doing it, and maybe send me a little of it because I could use it. I got a quick drink there. So let's see. Terry says, I have no life. Email me anytime. This is true. We know that Terry has no life. Terry has a life. Terry's great. So let's see, silvers for Fox, Terry, da 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 da. And it devolved into Star Trek jokes. Oh God, oh no, people, come on now. I see people making Star Trek jokes about something in the chat. That's great. Let's see. Cajun Beauty asks, if a character is an add-on character for a base figure that is already out there, are we still required to have poses included? Terry says, poses are not required for add-ons. Just be sure that it will work with basic poses. Some morphs will cause issues with basic poses. Yes, they will. Let's see. She says one that comes to mind is a vendor did a Kim Kardashian badonkadonk. No poses worked with that caboose. But did the train roll on through, Terry? That's what we all want to know. Did the train roll on through? Matt Pitt says that's where joint control morphs come into play. Yes, they certainly do. And that is a topic that I probably should get into covering at some point, because we haven't really done that, and it is a wacky fun time JCMs can be, and really something that opens the door into the deeper side of character creation with morphing and rigging manipulation. There's a lot more stuff to get into with that. I know earlier on, like a couple months back, we did a series that was the complete character development series, and in it we did a character development. It was a scaled down one that was a texture set and some morphs, a couple of morphs, but it was meant to be smaller. It was meant to be more bite-sized, introductory level stuff. Just seeing that you comment with something about JCMs reminds me that at some point we do need to tackle much more in-depth character development like that, because there are some crazy cool stuff that we can do. DS has kind of, I've become a total DS convert because of some of the stuff exactly in that ballpark. So that's something kind of cool. Let's see. Terry says that vendor needed to create poses for that character morph. Yeah, and going to that issue there, Terry, just this is something that is kind of an interesting point, and something that I would say, Terry, you or your testers can, I invite you to suggest to people, if you have, like, if you guys have a product come through like Badonkadonk there that that has some kind of an issue where poses don't work in or whatever, if you run that by me sometime, or just like say, hey, can you take a look at this, I can take a look at that and probably tell whether it's a question of their setup is causing poses not to work, or their setup is just going to require new poses, because a lot of times there's a difference. Most of the time, actually, you can do things in setting up extreme character shapes where you adjust rigging and do some things to the rigging that will then make that character shape adapt with, or kind of go the other way. It will make the poses seem like they're adapting to that character shape. But that's some stuff that's kind of some black magic voodoo that a lot of folks doing this don't really understand. And for good reason. It's a tricky. There's some tricky stuff to get into there, but that's part of what I'm here for, is to help content artists at CGBytes learn those kind of things, really get in there and figure out how to make their stuff get better. So I'm saying that for the benefit of everybody who's here listening, but also for the benefit of my friends at CGBytes, Terry and crew, because you guys absolutely point that kind of stuff to me, and I'll definitely do my best to apply my limited knowledges to that sort of thing and see if we can't help people make some better stuff. Let's see. Okay, then I think we're brought just about back current here with the chat. Russ Barrett says, very important when looking for seams. Render the seam with different lights. Some scenes don't show with HDRI lights, but do with standard lights, spec lights, mesh lights, etc. That's a good point. It is something to keep in mind. Most of the time, if you're going to have a problem come up with textures that is like textures seem to be doing different things under different lighting, I can tell you, Russ, right off the bat, that very, very, very frequently the reason that's going to happen, and this is not every time, but very frequently the reason you're going to have those kinds of things pop up is gamma issues. Gamma issues in the textures themselves, and I can show you very quickly right now where to go and tweak that. If I pop over into DS and I take my material selection tool and I just click on something to select it, and I go into surfaces, and let's say here on the cloth for this lovely top, which is now a freebie available on CGBytes for you today. If I click on that, and then I go to anywhere that I have an image map applied, if I click on the icon for the image map, I can then go into the image editor, and that's going to allow me to set different settings. Most of the time your gamma is going to be 0. But sometimes you may have to play with that gamma to get things to work the way they're supposed to under all lighting conditions. And if there's lighting issues happening with your textures, a lot of times gamma is the culprit, and specifically gamma on normal mapping. Okay, because if the gamma on normal mapping, like gamma on normal maps should be set to 1. And if it isn't, and I honestly don't know why sometimes it ends up not set to 1, but sometimes it happens. And you could have something painted up with great normal maps, great beautiful surface detail, and it looks awesome, and then you render it and you're like, how did that giant seam come into it? I can't even see it in the viewport. When you have that happen, odds are your normal map has bad gamma, and you need to set that to 1, or you may need to re-output your normal map from whatever you're using for that, and then make sure that it's set to 1. So it's just a quick look at one aspect of that particular issue for Russ there, talking about textures and seams and lighting. So let's see. All right. And I'm just kind of going on through the rest of the way through the chat. And let's see. Oh, I see Mr. Art Pop joined us not too long ago. Terry says the badonkadonk is in the store. Badonkadonk. Let's see, now I got a Trace Atkins song, because I listen to some country music alongside the other stuff, and I got a Trace Atkins song stuck in my head now. Honky tonk badonkadonk. It's a hilarious song. Susan bops me over the head. Susan, why are you bopping me over the head? That's so wrong. Don't do that. Don't bop me. I am not little bunny frickin' foo-foo here, okay? I am not to be bopped on the head. Booped on the nose like doggo, maybe, but not bopped on the head. There was a question I saw back up in here, and I wanted to make sure I got that. Let's see. Okay, Video Beagle asks, I'm wondering, with all due respect to our hosts, oh, that's always a great way to start a question, dude. With all due respect, how have vendors found the suggestions mentioned reflected across the 3D marketplace? Let's see. Terry says, I can't speak for other brokerages. Susan asks, in regards to testing practices, can't tell. Terry says, can't tell because I don't know. Les might could comment. Yes, I can comment on that. As you guys know, I sell through more places than CGBytes. I just work very closely with CGBytes. CGBytes is kind of CGBytes is the home to the majority of my catalog. But I also sell other places for various reasons and different types of content that feel like they have an audience in one place or another, and there's a lot of reasons for that. One of the things that I like about CGBytes is they don't require exclusivity. I like that. As an artist, as a business person, I detest exclusivity. I feel like we are out there I'm out there trying to make a living with my art, and if I'm pinned down to one place, that place better be like there better be some heavy perks, big perks, like the kind of perks that nobody in this business wants to offer, and for good reason. I mean, it just, and it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to be exclusive, because not every customer is going to shop at every given store, and different stores have a different flavor, different stores have a different setup, different people like different things. And if you as an artist want to hit the broadest, want to have the most success you can, you're gonna probably at least entertain the idea of selling through multiple sources. Now, that said, the question was posed by, I think, Video Beagle above, about how these things apply across stores. And early on, when I opened today's session, I did talk a little bit, kind of in some kind of vague terms, about experiences, and how, and I've said later on too that some of the worst experiences I've had in this business have been testing. The majority of my bad experiences in this have been dealing with testing. I'll be honest, and I won't name any names or anything, because that's just wrong. But I have had, and not at CGBytes, by the way, not at CGBytes, but I have had many moons ago, I have had testers who were just ridiculously rude to me, and had this attitude that blew my freaking mind, where and I even used this term at one point where I said, I was like, the testers are the gatekeeper. They hold the keys to the pathway through which our stuff gets sold. They're the gatekeepers. So you have to be able to deal with testing. But man, there have been times in the past where a tester or two here and there have been, boy, did they take that gatekeeper. Like, they really took that seriously. Like, not just seriously. I shouldn't say it like that, because it makes it sound like I think others don't take it seriously. They took it really far, and like it was very obvious that a couple of folks had this really draconian sort of attitude. And like, one of the worst things that I ever experienced, I think, was when I had a tester who I was assigned multiple things at one point start trying to art direct me. Oh my God. There's a lot I can put up with. There's a lot I can take. But that was bad. Just really bad. And I actually think some of the products, I think there's a couple of products I have sitting here just on a metaphorical, because it's on a hard drive, but I was going to say sitting on a shelf, that I've never even released anywhere. Just because I got so pissed off with the way I was getting treated, honestly, and the level of art direction. And I remember having some serious discussions with management who these people were under, because I was like, look, it's one thing to tell me, yeah, there's a seam here, there's something broken, but this is going too far. So it was weird. That was very stressful. I hated that. Conversely, that's not something that I don't think I've ever had anything in the range of that happen at CGBytes. So it's a different experience there. So, but kind of going back to the question I was bringing up there from Video Beagle about that stuff, is about how that applies across the broader, pardon me, open my mouth when I speak, the broader marketplace. And most everything that I'm telling you in here applies everywhere to some degree or another. I can just get very specific about CGBytes because it's the one place that that I'm actually involved with in a more intimate way than just being a a vendor. So hopefully that kind of answered your question a little bit there. Let's see. So let's scroll on down. Video Beagle also asks, do you find others look for similar issues? Let's see. Yeah, a lot of the exact same things that you're going to find CGBytes talking about. I know other places test for, like, all of the stuff. Everything that we've talked about here today is generally going to be tested for everywhere. But some places are going to do things a little differently. They're going to have different. I don't want to get too deep into it, but there are some things that, and frankly, there are some things that are requirements in other places that, to me, are honestly kind of asinine. So there's that. But generally speaking, everything that we're talking about here will apply anywhere. It's just if I had to categorize the difference in testing at CGBytes from elsewhere, it's that there's between having the single point of contact versus contact with directly to the testers. That's a good thing. And then the other aspect of it is that they're at CGBytes, you're going to have the list of things that are going to be tested for is the list of things that are going to be tested for, and that's that. It's going to be very cut and dried, which can actually sometimes be a little odd if you're used to places that have tons of wiggle room and everything wildly varies from tester to tester and blah blah blah, all that kind of stuff. Then when you come someplace where it's very cut and dried, it's like this is this is this, this is this, here you go. That can almost seem overly blunt at times, and it can be a little hard to parse out if your experience has been otherwise, which mine has. But once you kind of get used to it, it's like you have to talk to Terry a little bit, and you get used to it. You figure out, oh wait, no, they just want these things to be sure they're right. Okay, these things have to be right, and then you're good. And it actually becomes a very fast, very effective process there. Whereas in a lot of other places, you get just a lot of different hands in the fire, and it's very aggravating sometimes. So hopefully that kind of characterizes some of what you were looking for an answer to there. Let's see. And Susan bops me over the head again. Huh. Art Pop. Hi, Liz. Hey. Hi, Art Pop. How you doing? Let's see. Candy Beauty. I'm just kind of catching back up in the chat there. Art Pop says, this is actually a good question, and this kind of shows my, I don't know, like one of the luxuries of being in Middle America is I don't really have to think about other languages all that much. So Art Pop says, hi guys, I'm hopeful of becoming a vendor, have some product idea which is in development, but I'm not a native English speaker. You know what? Your speech in text in the chat is very good, though. I know some people who claim to speak the English language who you run circles around them already. So he says, but I'm not a native English speaker, so how do you guys handle this? Anyone to help with that during testing? That's actually an interesting question. I don't want to speak for Terry on that exactly, but I would just about bet that given the level of English you already demonstrate, you shouldn't have any problem. And from my experience of working with artists from other countries and cultures and languages and all that stuff, I'm very confident that that you'll be fine. So yeah, you should be good. Like I said, the degree of English that you demonstrate there is already very functional. And if someone is watching this and English isn't their first language and they have that same question, just ask. We sell online, so it's everything's international now. So it may be something where if there is a language issue, then hopefully a solution can be found to that. There's lots of different routes to take that sort of thing in these days, which is pretty nifty. So but as with most things, it doesn't hurt to ask. So anybody who's watching this, catching a rewatch, here's that question, definitely don't hesitate to ask that sort of thing and get into it. So let's see. Video Beagle says, on the DS front, do you look for 3D light maps, iRay, both, or the requirements? Terry says, we don't require 3D light. It's up to you what you include in your product files. Then Video replies, Beagle replies, you find that 3D light being included helps sales. Terry says, not particularly. I would concur with that, Beagle. Since one of the reasons that I avoided Daz Studio like the plague for a very long time was I did not like 3D light at all, and I still don't. Sometimes I don't know. I really don't like it. I've seen some people able to do some cool things with it. I could probably do some cool stuff with it if I really wanted to, but I don't like 3D light. And probably the biggest boom in moving units of Daz Studio itself came with the inclusion of iRay and what iRay could do. So, I think for the vast majority of users at this point, iRay is considered a default. So, I wouldn't be too concerned about 3D light in things. So, let's see. All right. So that kind of brings us current on the chat. Nice to have a good active group today. That's awesome. Cajun Beauty asks, Beagle, where are you now? Oh, cool. Terry says 3D light mats tend to annoy the testers. I know they would annoy me because I despise 3D light. I want to take a moment and show you guys a couple of things while I am, while we have a few minutes. We've got about 15 minutes or so left, maybe 10. Oh, actually, we've only got about 8 to 10 minutes left in our block here. So I agree with Susan talking about 3D light. She says, I'm 3D light mats. I'm so happy not making them. Me too. I despise it. Limba Zero says, I am Finnish and have to use some English at workplace. Dude, Limba, you're from Finland? You listen to Lordy, right? Come on, give me some love for Lordy. I know nobody else in this right now is going to know who I'm talking about. But if you're in Finland and you can score any Lordy swag, right here. Love for Lordy here in Southern Ohio. I got a yes out of that. We got to talk, man. We got to talk. You're in Finland. I love Lordy. Lordy is awesome. Let's see. Cajun Beauty, Lordy rocks. All right, man. We got Lordy fans on here. That's great. Oh my God, that's so great. You guys know I would love Lordy because I'm a monster guy. And what is Lordy if not like the 6S1 of music with the monsters, man? That's, it's like, would you love a monster man? There you go, guys. Oh my God, that's awesome. Yeah, you know what? Yeah, I'm going to call you CB because saying the Cajun Beauty is kind of a long mouthful. CB, if Limba can send some Lordy swag along, then I'll share it with you. Video Beagle says Lordy won Eurovision a while back. Who doesn't know them? Wasn't that freaking awesome? Lordy won Eurovision, man. That was great. Oh man, yeah, guys. I'm a big, like, it's funny. Earlier I was talking about Trace Atkins, whose country is all hell, but I am a die-hard metalhead, lifelong metalhead, and Lordy is just. Lordy is the stuff. Anybody watching this who doesn't know, like, what is this Lordy thing these guys are talking about now? If you're watching this and you don't know who Lordy is, just go to YouTube and type Lordi and just watch the videos. If you like horror, old school horror, fun monster stuff, and just loud old school hard rock, heavy metal stuff. My suggestion is look up Lordy and look up a song called "Would You Love a Monster Man," or "Hard Rock Hallelujah." These songs, like their videos, are just priceless. They're so great. Video Beagle says, "Oh, you're 6S1. I didn't know that. Love your stuff." Yeah, dude. I'm Les. I'm the 6S1 guy. So, yeah. So now you know who you're talking to, man. You guys are great. I appreciate it. It's nice. It's nice to be appreciated like that too, you guys. That's very cool. So, oh man, yeah. As soon as I saw somebody mention Finland, I'm like, Finland, Lordy, and all of a sudden the Lordy people. That happens too. It's like you can be anywhere where there are like metal fans, and if there are Lordy fans there, you could say Lordy, and you'll immediately get the look, and everybody is like, okay, cool. We know who's who. It's great. It's like there's a handful of things I'm into that are like that. Oh man. So I wanted to show you guys a couple of quick things. They're not requirements at CGBytes in terms of testing, but they are things that I've adopted as sort of best practices from experience with a variety of places. And so the one big thing that I've kind of adopted, actually, I shouldn't say things because there's really just one thing I wanted to show you guys, but it's regarding textures and looking at texture UV layouts. Okay, making clothing in particular. Okay, this won't work on characters, but making clothing, if you the clothing that's going to yield the greatest return for you as a professional in this is any clothing that, well, your clothing either needs to be successful. It either needs to be super cool, like cool enough that people are like, oh, I gotta have that, or it needs to be super useful. And by being useful, I mean it has to be something people are going to want to alter, use for a lot of different things. It has to be able to get some mileage. And so this one particular practice I've kind of adopted just out of some experience, and really it was actually a requirement from a couple of different clients that I've had over the last couple of years. And it's funny too, folks who've been friends with me and heard me in private for years will probably be like, oh my God, I can't believe he's doing this, because they've heard me rail about this before. But it's using a texture checking grid, and I actually despise it. I really do. I hate it because there's some things about it that I think are just lie. It's absolute liars, But at the same time, if let's see, where were those? Oh no. I have to dig through my own stuff. I have so many directories of things. Sometimes it gets a little confusing. But those those texture tiles can be dirty liars. They really can. So let me just poke around and find this before I waste too much time talking about it without actually having it on screen. Here we go, texture check grid. So, but here's the thing, and this is just the rule that I have started aspiring to. See how with this I can read everything on it. That's the test. It's a stupid simple test. But if I can read everything on it, then that means that someone who wanted to paint textures for this in Photoshop, wanted to use like UV mapper or whatever to output a a UV template, could probably do that pretty effectively. Because a lot of times when folks do that kind of painting, in Photoshop or wherever, they will use one of these particular checker type grids to as kind of a reference check. They'll be like, oh well, 2 was here, so I need this detail there, and D was here and I need this detail there. So that's something that folks, there's a lot of people out there who are still using Photoshop to texture things, and if your stuff is easily texturable in that method, then it opens the door for a lot more people to make add-ons to your product. And that's one of the dynamics of this business that I've always been a little fascinated with, is that we'll have somebody will make a product, somebody else will make an add-on for that product. Maybe it's clothing that goes on a figure, and then somebody else may make poses that complement that clothing, so your add-on just got an add-on. And somebody else may make textures that complement that, so an add-on just got an add-on and another add-on. Somebody might make material setups that change or enhance that set of textures. So the add-on got 2 add-ons and another add-on followed by another add-on. And it's really neat. So over in the chat, Nick asks, is it worth including UV templates with a product? I was actually looking in the project template from CGBytes just a little while ago myself, and in their template Studio library setup, they include in the runtime with textures a template folder. So I would actually ask if Terry could clarify whether or not that's a requirement or not. But I do know that folks like Jason, who really want that they really want to be able to texture in that manner I was talking about with Photoshop and all that, they love having those templates there. And if you save them the trouble of having to output that stuff, then they'll appreciate that, and you'll build some goodwill there at the very least. So let's see. So yeah, that's going to do it. I think that pretty much covers about everything that I wanted to get into with with testing and navigating the process of testing. I hope I'm going to take a couple of minutes here. We're actually just past the 2-hour mark, so technically our block is done. But Nick says, okay, I'll include them from now on. So Nick and Jason, there you go, guys. Cool. Yeah, Jason says for himself personally, if a product has no templates included, he normally skips it. So there are folks out there who that is a thing for them. I have to admit, as a content producer, I personally don't do templates very often. Granted, a lot of the stuff that I make is complicated enough that if I did the template, you'd probably look at the template and be like, what is that? And that's not a slam on anybody. It's just, it's like when you do some of the kind of stuff that I like to do, things get real intricate real quick, and it can be kind of crazy. And I personally, I do encourage people. I'm like, please people, try to, maybe consider texturing with something like ZBrush or Substance. Substance is actually really economical to get into and great for texturing clothing. So, but those templates, people do appreciate them. So, Dr. Gavagai Plus asks, will 3D light disappear when NVIDIA card prices drop more? That's a good question. I hadn't even thought about that. I would imagine that 3D light will probably not go away anytime soon, and I say that only because while there's very little to any real forward development going on for it, it doesn't seem... I doubt that the folks at DAZ think that it hurts anything to keep it. So I think they would rather keep it than run the risk of angering any of the people who still like it. So, because those people also tend to be pretty vocal. So let's see. Cajun Beauty says, I am dreading doing makeups and nail colors. I can help you out. Just reach out. Let me know what you need some help with. Show me what you're doing, and I'll try to help shepherd you through the process. So I'm part of why I do this. Part of why CGBytes has me doing this whole process of teaching and sharing this stuff is I see this market as a great way. The hobby for a lot of people behind this as a great opportunity for a lot of folks to take things that they enjoy, things, art, design, animation, even, or if they're new to 3D. There's a lot of different aspects of this where people can find opportunities to be creative and express themselves, and then also turn that creation and expression into something that yields them a return, brings back some kind of profit back to them, beyond just attention and accolades. So it's really a means. I like the idea that through doing this kind of art, I get to express myself. I get to create things that allow other people to hopefully express themselves. But then also, in the course of there being this sort of market that's developed around it for hobbyists and professionals alike, it gives me a chance then to help introduce people to these art forms and processes, and in such a way that hopefully you guys can, maybe start to have some extra money out of it, or start to build some kind of a business, or maybe even like other people who I've worked with through the years and taught some things to, who now are full-time professionals at this sort of thing. So and that's really satisfying for me. That's a cool thing, because on the one hand, I get to do a lot of cool stuff, but then it's really kind of neat to be able to see that aspect of things. It's neat to be able to take my experience and help share them with you guys, and see people start to, find their artistic voices, and then find their own sort of business sense and growth out of that. That's just kind of a cool thing, there's this neat way that people, I've gotten to see people actually have their lives made better in some fashion through what we do with this stuff, and without getting too gushy and weird over it. It's just a cool thing, man. It's a really cool, neat thing, the way that all kind of plays out. And so I don't know, it's just kind of cool. God, I don't even remember how I got onto the subject of that, but it's something that kind of floats around the back of my head a lot. So let's see. KGBD says, let's get together, please. Yeah, talk to me sometime. I'm available most of the time. Let's see. All right. She says, oh man, she says, my first attempt made him look like a deranged clown. Deranged clowns are not bad. Those can be cool. I've made a good chunk of my living before off of making deranged clown artwork. So let's see. Video Beagle says, I'll have to look into making a number texture grid like that. Dude, if you go to Google and just type UV check grid, you'll probably get some free resources pop right up in the image search that you can use for that. No need to have to bother making one for yourself. There's like dozens of different takes on those kind of grids too. So let's see. And Reggie Hicks says, wow, this is a great stream. I learned a lot. Thanks, listen, everyone. Well, you are very much welcome, man. We're glad to have you. So all right, very cool, you guys. So I am going to be signing off. It's going to bring us to a close of yet another of our CGBytes Artist Development Seminars. I want to thank you guys for coming out. It's been a really good day. We had a good number of people watching today too, which is kind of nice. I like seeing that. And very active and lively discussion today. That was great. Really appreciate that. Glad to get all that input and hopefully answer some questions and show some stuff. Next week is going to be the last in our business series. So the and that one hopefully Mr. Jason will actually be able to be on with me in person, because I think that'll be fun. That'll be kind of cool having him on, because the last piece of the puzzle isn't testing and getting a release. It's what do you do after it's released? Because once your products are released, once you get a product hitting a store and people can buy it, well, the next big thing then is they need to know it's there. And CGBytes does an admirable job of promoting and helping get the word out on products and all that. But as vendors, as artists, as content artists ourselves, professionals, we owe it to ourselves to do that too. And really, it is very wise to try and build up as much of your own network for promotion as you can. And so next week we're going to talk about promotions and really dig in on a lot of concerns and considerations and avenues and approaches and all kinds of neat stuff that we as content artists working in this field should try and keep in mind. Look at a few different aspects of that. So that's coming up next week, you guys. And it's cool. Jason spent, it says spent the last 20 years branding himself as Loki online. Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff about that. So, so guys, thanks for being out. This is going to bring us to a close. As always, want to thank CG and the good folks there, Mr. Jason and Miss Terry, for being here and putting this thing together. And for having me, for those, since there was somebody, I'm so used to you guys all kind of knowing who I am that I didn't even think to say it today. I am Les Garner from 6S1 Media, and yeah, been cool hanging out with you guys today and talking about some stuff that maybe doesn't normally get talked about a whole lot. So hopefully we'll see you guys back here next week. So same time, same day. Till then, you guys keep making cool stuff. Thanks.